All right, man. So how about for today, let's skip the small talk and let's dive right into this, because there is an article and a piece of research that I think is, first of all, absolutely mind-blowing in its importance. And second of all, I think it really serves the thesis statement of why we started our agency and what gets us up every single day. So it's an article in Adweek from Paul Hybert and Audrey Kemp. And the title and subtitle are "Nearly Half of Holdco Agency Staffers Want Out." Just 32% of Holdco employees say morale is positive compared to a majority at indie agencies. So let's roll the credits and let's dive right in.
3, 2, 1, go!
So, Jordan, to summarize the article by Paul and Audrey, who do a great job, and it's quantitative, it's survey-based, half of Holdco employee staffers want out. And there's a variety of metrics. They're all fairly negative when you look at whole company employees compared to independent agencies. Let me pause for a second. Obvious caveat to this entire thing. You and I, when we're not printing, like literally printing money from all the profits we make out of this podcast, our day job is running an independent agency, right? So we definitely have a skewed perception of this, and I think that's why it's powerful, because this article is completely quantified. It's based upon a survey, but we do not have an unbiased perspective. We come from an independent agency. We've decided that's how we're going to feed our children. That's how we're going to give them health care. That's how we're going to send them to school, is running an independent agency. So we're not completely unbiased. That said, with nearly half of them wanting out, I've got two questions for you, which is, one, why do you think that is? And two, why should brands even care?
Oh my God, so many questions about this. One is who conducted the survey? Not like I've got, a bias against media who's just looking for clickbait, which they are. Think about it. Like, was that survey? Like, did the brands know that this was happening? Did the Holdcos know it was happening? Probably not. Probably
not. But that's what I love about this, because if you look at Adweek, if you look at Ad Age, if you look at any of these periodicals, I mean, they're all going to Cannes in a couple of weeks. Like, everything in our industry, in a lot of ways, feels like it's in support of the holding companies.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I never understood why they got so much power, but whatever. They control billions upon billions of dollars. But this is the first time someone's been like, hey, man, can we stop and think about this? So I hear your point, but I think unlike clickbait, this is the first time they've been held accountable that I've seen in a while.
Yeah, totally. Disgruntled, unhappy employees. Sounds a lot like the news last night between a government employee who ran, Doge, and his boss.
Break all our podcast rules. Let's get right into politics.
There's a lot of people that aren't happy. God, that what a show that was last night. I'm still going on. When the leadership says one thing and does another, like, I think people are just like, what the right? And I think that's a lot of it comes down to. I just think that there's very little communication between leadership, and I mean like the C-suite and all the people at the top of these holdcos. Let me take a step back. Just below the C-suite, the presidents of these agencies, and there's a lot of agencies in these holdcos, right? Like, where's the communication on a day-to-day basis? And I think that's what is really tough when you get to a size of some of these holdco agencies. It's just really tough to have a good culture, good communication, and it just breeds contempt. I think that's one of the major issues. And so people can interpret stuff the way they want to. The leaders say one thing, but they do another. Like,
what
that
do you think
means
they're saying, and what do you? Yeah, sorry, but what do you think they're saying, and what do you think they're doing?
I think that they're saying things like, "Oh, we're not going to do any more restructuring," and then they do restructuring. Right? There's going to be no more changes, and then there's changes. Oh, this is going to be your job from now on, and then no, it's not. It's going to be we're going to do something else. This is going to be your boss. No, just kidding. Actually, you're going to have a new boss. I think that's the sort of stuff that I've heard, which is like really disconcerting to people who are just trying to, make it in their career. They love this industry. They love what they do, but they just can't seem to get the support they need.
Yep. And then here's the second question, which is, why should brands even care? If the Holdco employees are for lack of a better term, relatively unhappy. Like, what's the difference? If you're Coke, if you're Pepsi, if you're trying to hire these guys, like, why should you give a shit at all?
We just hired an ECD, head of creative, and he came in and he talked about his experiences at the Holdco. I'll tell you what happens is it's not a nice culture. It's kind of cutthroat. Like, they're trying to arrive at the best idea. And oftentimes, like, that just means that, you got to put your ego in your pocket and you got to, realize that things are going to get tough. But at the same time, he's like, everybody was afraid to speak up. So think about it. You're trying to come up with great ideas, collaborate and throw stuff out where you can come up and present really good stuff that might break the mold of what was done before, right? To break through the clutter, break through the noise. Well, nobody's going to do that if you've got cultures that are basically cutthroat, top down, like, do what I say, and that's it. I think that's why a brand should care. It's just, you're not getting the best work. You've got great people, don't get me wrong, and I think you form great relationships with them, but I don't think they're in a position to deliver the best work possible.
Totally. And I had this question, and I reached out to the analytics team at Questus to look into it a little bit deeper, because I think inherently we've always thought to ourselves, happier workforce, better deliverables, period.
Yeah.
But is that necessarily true? Can we quantify that? So we found some crazy data out there. There's a study from the University of Oxford, and it found that happy employees are 13% more productive. When you're talking about 13% in the business world, in particular in a slim margin business like advertising, that is a massive number. They found that engaged workplaces see up to 51% less turnover. That's a huge number. Like, think about that. If you're a brand and you're hiring an agency and you get those individuals up to speed, now they know your brand guidelines, they know your strategy, they know your KPI, and then they turn over, that's just wasted hours. Like, in the world of marketing and advertising, for lack of more sophisticated terminology, the factory, the robots are actually human beings, right? So when you've got turnover, all of a sudden that machinery is being turned off, right? Likewise, organizations with high employee engagement report 78% less absenteeism, right? Like, that is 78% less. That's huge. So basically, people are more likely to leave. People are more likely to not show up. And when they do show up, they're statistically significantly more productive. So, I think the issue here isn't just what's right for the team members, right? Obviously, creating high morale, making people happy, helping them feel creative is the morally right thing to do. But just from a business performance standpoint, like, you just fundamentally outperform. If you're happier at work, you produce better. Done, period. Full stop.
Yeah, so I wonder, like, how do you become happier at work? Right? What does that mean? They said the number one reason people quit jobs is because of their boss, right? It's usually not a peer. It's the boss. Yep. So we've been doing this for 25 years. People who are watching this have been managing people for longer than that. What does a great leader do that stops that? Yeah, I'll tell you, for me, and I want to hear from you, it's funny, I go into these meetings and I think I kind of put people back on their heels a little bit, because I tell them, like, I'm here to support you. Like, as much as I'm going to drive the agency vision, at the end of the day, I need to know what you need to do your best work. And that's what it comes down to. I may not always be able to deliver that, but I need to know what it is so I can try to come up with solutions to that. And that is the honest to God truth when it comes to, like, how I think you manage really great people. You need to figure out how to give them exactly what they need and get out of the way.
Yeah. We've spent a lifetime studying this, and I think we've boiled it down to this one key factor, which is putting people in position to do their best work. It all comes down to that. So there are all different pieces of ingredients. There are all different styles. I'm louder than you. You're a better listener than me, right? There's all different ways of getting at this thing, right? And to be clear, I'm a manager. I don't want to be a manager. I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'm bad at, and I am not a good manager, and I'm comfortable with that. And And I don't want to come off like we're coming from the hilltop with this like perfect agency and everybody's happy all the time. Like it's a service business. It's very analogous to a restaurant. Like you got to find the right people who absolutely love it. But our job is to absorb stress. Our job is to ride off of adrenaline. And there are lots of great days, but at least 10% of them for each person, and they're pretty tough, right? It's not all rainbows and sunshine. But I think the bottom line of what we've learned is it's all about putting people in position to do their best work. So we've invested in all the goofy things. Like we've had the bar, we had the foosball table, we had the ping pong table. Like, that was it. Remember back in the day, ping pong table. And people are like, dude, all you can hear is ba-blink, 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 ba-blink. It's like, It couldn't be any more counterproductive, right? And we do the great outings for the holidays. We do one great summer outing like Santa Barbara in the summer, and we do all those things. But it's mostly window dressing, right? It's about every single dollar that we invest in, every single decision that we make, are we putting people in position to do their best work, right? And there's a lot of ingredients that go behind that, right? Do we have a clear goal and role and value proposition for our agency, right? Are we getting them the systems, the processes, and the tools that enable them to do their best work?
I would even say when you can't give them what they want, right? Because that happens.
All the time.
All the time.
Yep.
Do you explain your reasoning, or do you leave it at "I'm sorry, I can't do it"? Right. Yeah. Like I think that's a huge deal. They have to understand that the decisions that we're trying to make, you're basically holding many different disparate ideas in your head, or goals in your head, and sometimes they work against each other. You're just trying to make the best decision, right, to move the agency towards its agency goals or company goals. I think explaining what that is when you can't give them what they want is vital. But you got, giving up a timeline, like here's what we're doing about it, but we've decided not to invest here, which is going to help you. We're going to invest over here. Yeah. And I think that is, treat them like adults, treat them like business owners, explain the situation, and they'll get it, right? And they'll come along and they'll see what you're trying to do. But if you don't explain it, and I mean like on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis, you're going to end up with pissed off employees.
Communicate clearly. Better to communicate with less clarity than not communicate at all, right? Because when you create that void gets filled, right? And it's just all day, every single day. And, you look at there's a great book that you and I are both reading along with our leadership team, the CEO test. And this is one of those great books because this guy's, he did the corner office interviews at New York Times, and I'm making the number up here, but I think he interviewed like 600 CEOs. This guy is not just pontificating. He's got tons and tons of data. But the core theme of it is have a key message for what you're trying to accomplish, stay on point until it's almost redundant and boring, right? And sometimes it's a high level. What are you trying to do as a business? What are you trying to do for your customers? And sometimes a lower level, which is what are we trying to do in this department, or what are we trying to do for this specific client? And then sometimes, to your point, you have to vacillate off of that, right? You know that the client's biggest need is branding, but they've got some direct response that maybe they're over-investing in. Well, sometimes you have to get off of strategy for a moment, just explain to people, like, why are we doing this? And maybe that's the problem at holding companies is they're so focused in on their short-term performance that they're not investing enough in that day-to-day communication, because that day-to-day communication is an expense. It's time. Time is an expense at agencies.
100%. Yeah. I mean, we've always heard like, oh, these holdcos, they're always worried about the bottom line. Sure. Like, who isn't? Like, maybe they're a little more focused on it. I just think there's a lack of communication throughout the holdcos that really hurts them. There's been a lot of acquisitions over the past 12 months in holdcos, or consolidations that hurts employee morale. So I don't think this is a surprise to the C-suite at holdcos on where morale sits compared to independent agencies. I think they also know that, if they can get through the next 6 to 12 months, they'll be in a much better position. And they're going to, we know a lot of people at these holdcos, like they're trying their best, but sometimes, yes, it's hard to communicate with 1,000 employees on an intimate level on a regular basis. Here at Questus, it's not as hard, given that we don't have 1,000 employees. We have enough that it makes it difficult, and it means you got to make it a priority.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I'm glad you're bringing up the bottom line because I have some data on this one. Let me give you a few here. Companies with highly engaged employees experience a 23% increase in profitability and an 18% boost in productivity. And then if you zoom out and make it a little bit more macro, right? Let's talk about stock performance. Companies listed in the Fortune 100 best companies to work for, they consistently outperform the market 3.5 times over a 27-year period. 3.5 times. That's a crazy number. And then, of course, you've heard me mention this one a million times over and over again, which is firms of endearment. Companies that empower their employees and all of their audiences, they outperform the S&P 500 10x over 10 years. So the bottom line is, if you can really focus in on engaging and empowering your employees, the financial performance is exponential. It's literally through the roof. You can't compare it. 10x, 3.5x, you name it. But the problem, well, what is the problem? You tell me, so I can stop my little rant here.
Let me think about this.
Well, sorry, dude. Here, I'm catching you off guard. Let me just finish this whole rant.
Go ahead. Yeah.
But the problem is, these guys are public companies. They have to report to the street every single quarter, right? So empowering your team, focusing on their morale, their satisfaction, that's a long-term investment. And in the short term, can hit a lot of bumps in the road. Sometimes your margin can dip down into the single digits because you're literally investing in it. But holding companies, they can't do that. 3 times a year, they have to report their quarterly earnings, and then again at the end of the year. So they're being measured, engaged, and the top executives are being rewarded based upon how they perform on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I totally agree. Let me ask you about this poll that you started the podcast with. How much do you think this has to do with work from home versus back to the office?
That's a great question. I haven't thought about it. Why? Do you have a hypothesis?
I just think we're still seeing the effects of it. I think it's still shaking out. In the last 12 months, more and more people have been called back to the office, right? That's clear. We've seen that. You've had people who have uprooted their lives, moved someplace because they've been told that the company's now remote and now it's going back to being, in person. I followed this whole thing pretty closely, and there are companies that will never go back, right? We talked about like Coinbase, a company that's worth, I don't know what the market cap is, 200 billion right now. Talking about 50,000 employees, 30,000 employees. I'm guessing. And then you've got companies like, no, we own the real estate. This is what it comes down to. We own the real estate. We own the buildings. Everybody back. Because they can't sell the real estate right now because it's underwater. So now they're like, okay, we've got to go and bring people back. And I think people are like, I think that's part of the factor here. I don't want to be in the office full time. I think there's going to be a happy medium of 3 days a week. I don't think we're ever going to go back to a 5 days a week unless you work for JP Morgan, right? Or Wells Fargo or whatever. I think everybody else can be 3 days a week. And I think that as we've seen, I think productivity maintains exactly what it was pre-COVID, pre-full remote work. I think there's just too many benefits. You and I sit down at our desk, as do most of our employees, come 7:30 in the morning. Like, if you think pre-COVID, nobody was at their desk before 9, and by 5, everybody was gone. That's just not the case anymore. I think there's benefits to be had there. What you miss out on, we can certainly talk about, but I think that's a factor in the survey.
Yeah, I will say it's one of those other areas, and God, there's such a long list of things I've been wrong about, but this is one of those where I was dead wrong. I was like, dude, there's no way every company is not going to go back in office, and there's no way that every company is not going to perform better by getting everybody under one roof. I actually think the one thing that doesn't work particularly well is that hybrid approach, unless you're strict in when you're in the office or when you're not. Meaning if you're like everybody in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that may work because you're forcing people in, right?
Yeah.
But when it's like, hey, man, just pick 3 days, like we've seen it. We tried that stuff. And it was like you come in and then all you're doing is you're sitting on Zoom and you're just sitting on top of each other. I'm shocked. We are very, very, very remote. And I'm shocked at how much better it is in a lot of ways. Like, and I think there's a counter argument. I'm sure there's companies that have everybody under their roof and it works fantastic for them. But this remote workforce for us has worked really well. I think to your point, because you're able to grab a couple extra hours of productivity every day.
Well, when we go into the office and meet, you know what happens? Nobody gets actual work done. Everybody just does meetings or collaborates and talks, right? I know that's work, but it's not actual, like, I'm doing a deck. I'm doing, if I'm in the creative department, I'm doing work in that sense. It is purely just a meetings thing. And then you talk to people at the end of the day and they're like, I don't know how I even got work done before, right? This whole remote work thing. I don't know. I come into the office now and I feel like it's like, ooh, look, squirrel. It's like every time somebody walks by the desk, right? Yes. Your head pops up. Oh, hey, like,
novelty factor.
You can't retrain your brain after spending 3 years at home and then think you're going to go in the office and be productive again. You were like, it just does. Your brain doesn't work that way.
We should do a whole episode for the folks who do care about optimizing remote work, right? Because we've now been doing it. First of all, we were one of those unique companies that even before COVID hit, we were doing quite a bit of it because we had multiple locations. But now we've been knee deep in this for, is it 5 years now? It's 5 years now. It's crazy. It's more than 5 years. Let's do an episode where we talk about what we've learned, right? And not that we're perfect, but let's share some of those learnings. But let's go back to the topic at hand for a second. You started picking this off, but if you were to sort of speed round through some of the ways that we can optimize employee morale, team satisfaction, the core theme of this article by Paul and Audrey at Adweek, like, what do you think are the core ingredients for increasing morale and satisfaction?
Yeah, I think one of them is that we practice is reaching out and doing like catch-ups with people that are, let's say, 2 levels, 3 levels, right, outside of your management range. So for us, it would be like, getting on the phone with, let's say, a copywriter or getting on the phone with an account exec and figuring out, like, what are you experiencing on the front lines? And just being able to talk to them and then also communicate. It's amazing because the account execs or designers, right? People who are just a few years into their job, they all talk. And you need a way to do a direct line of communication to them to understand what they're going through, but then also like what you're going through and the decisions you have to make. I think that's huge.
And that goes back to the point you were making before in all sincerity. Like, this is the type of thing where you're, 18,000 times better than me at. Like, your core point of this one, and when I asked a similar question before, is listening. Just take a moment to listen. Be patient. And again, that's hard. These big holding companies, the people who are listening, those are dollars that are going out, right, to the street in the short term. And all of a sudden, that's an expense line. It's hard to listen when that literally shows up as an expense line when you're reporting to the street 3 months later, right? So strong listening.
Yep.
What else do you think are key ingredients to keeping a team satisfied?
Ooh. I think we do a good job of this, but recognizing people at all levels who are doing great work and expressing gratitude. I mean, genuine gratitude. I think that I remember when I was young in my career and I had a boss who was pretty tough, and I buckled in and worked really hard. And it was my very first job. And in front of the whole agency, 3 weeks later, he stood up and recognized me, right? Called out my name, what I was doing. From that moment on, I was loyal. Like, that was it. Like, he had my back. He recognized me in front of the whole company. I think that is something that you just have to do. It's hard, I think, for many people to do that. It's really hard, right? In a lot of big companies, you want to put yourself first. You want to show how great you are. there's no greater strength a leader can show than not talking about themselves, but talking about somebody else.
This is what I love about doing a podcast. It's the same as the books that we've written together. I'm like, damn it, I'm learning something right in the middle of this whole thing. I'm like, dude, can we get off this thing so we can give some recognition to people? Like, that's an easier thing to say than do because the pace of business is so rapid and accelerated, and we're very client-centric focused, and we're not crazy. We're also trying to make profits too.
Yeah.
Those types of things are easier said than done. And I've never seen us or any organization get too good at that, do it too much, right? You can see hypothetically, like you could get over the skis with that one and be cheesy and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I've never seen an organization get even close to getting excessive with that.
You know, all you have to do is like even a quick Slack or email to somebody, right? With their boss on it, right? Just to say, hey, look, I noticed, I saw this, right?
Yeah.
Like the work that you did. Just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
So,
all right, that's what I'm doing. We're ending this podcast early, and I'm going to send out some propers to people.
Oh, boy. Totally. Yes. Authentically. You just have to do it authentically.
Dude, that always happens in my mind, but sometimes I'm good about it, and sometimes you just move on to the next thing, right?
Same.
Having systems and processes for these things are super powerful. Let me throw one out. I get this theory, is you don't actually build culture. You hire culture. And I think when we started getting really good at it, or what I like to think is really good at it, it wasn't a fundamental change in what we did about managing and building our culture. It's just we got really good at hiring people. I know, for example, with myself, one of the big things that I did, I was like, dude, I don't think I'm very good at this, and I don't think I'm going to get really good at it. There's an incredible book. I mean, this is like one of my only 2 or 3 contributions to the entire universe in this industry is one of them is read a book called Who by Jeff Smart. It's one of the all-time greatest books. It fundamentally changed my business, changed my life, changed our career, etc. But it gets into it. But like I quickly learned that, this is an amazing, if not the single most important skill set, right? So I've gotten personally better at it, but I've also learned to like lean on people like our president, Debbie, who are much, much better at it. But in summary, I don't think businesses build great culture so much as really focusing on bringing it in the room every single day, finding people with the same value system, with the same love of marketing and advertising, the same perspective that we have, right? There's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to building brands and driving business performance and marketing and advertising. There's more than one way to have a great culture. Like I've seen cultures filled with assholes, but the assholes love it and the business performs well, and God bless them. That just doesn't work for us. So being really good at not just hiring great people, but hiring great people for your organization.
Yeah. There's like 3 things that I don't know if you hire for it or you constantly reinforce. Like you hire for integrity, honesty, trust, hardworking, but there's 3 things that we've learned over the last 25 years. One is this idea of like take action, right? I remember Quentin Tarantino. He's like, the difference between me and all the other copywriters who have great ideas? He's like, I was 20 years old and I decided I'm actually going to write the screenplay. I'm going to complete it. He's like, how many people had the great idea and never actually do it? He's like 99%. Yeah. So when it comes to like this bias for taking action, I think you just have to like tell people, hey, if you've got an idea and you've surfaced it to me or whoever, like, okay, great. Like go make it, go do it.
Great point, right? Because our industry has pontificators and you just don't need that.
Yeah. You're going to be wrong. You're going to break something, whatever, but just go build it and go do it. And then let's figure out how to make it better. And then we can either it's something that gets implemented internally at Questus or it's something that gets pitched out to a client. Like, I think taking action is huge.
Yep.
I don't think, people come to Questus and I think they're scared, as like most companies, about doing something that might, where they might feel like they're stepping out of line. Taking action, I think, is something that any great boss will encourage or should. And you should know that that's 50% of life. Is just doing something. As Woody Allen said, half of life is showing up. That's taking action.
Yeah, we used to talk about this a lot. We do talk about this a lot, which is an expression I like to use, which is miss aggressively. And what I mean by that was like when I was a kid, I played tennis. I wasn't great. I was halfway decent. And then I would realize like I missed, I don't know, making up 35% of the shots. So then what I would do is I'd start ham and egging it. Just get it over the net. Just get it over the net. And I realized when I was ham and egging it, I would still miss 35%. But the ones that went over were dog and people would pound them. Yeah. Then I realized if I just swung aggressively, I would still miss 35% of the shots. Same exact number. But the ones that went in were decent shots. So I like to use this expression of just miss aggressively. And to your point, it means not everything is going to succeed, but at least go for it. Error towards that side of action.
Totally. And so you're going to fail, right? That's like the other trait that I think we end up telling people over and over again. You're going to get beat up, right? You're going to fail. You're going to lose an account. You're going to lose a project's going to go sideways. Whatever it is, that doesn't define you. And, you hear it so much. I feel like that's one of the good things about social media. Like there's a lot of people that talk about like resilience and getting up off the mat and like what to do in business and personal life. But I can't tell you like how many times that has come up where you're training people who maybe are managing people for the very first time and they've got to, let somebody go or an account disappears. Like, guys, this is part of life. What did they say? Michael, I think it was Reggie Jackson had more strikeouts. For the people who know who Reggie Jackson is, played for the Yankees, Mr. October. He had more strikeouts in October than anybody else in baseball, right? And that's when the playoffs occur. He also had more home runs than anybody else in October.
Yeah.
Like that is the epitome of it. He will be remembered for the home runs. He will not be remembered for the strikeouts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like all great athletes have those incredibly short-term memories, right? No one more than a great quarterback, right? You throw an interception, by the next set of downs, you have to literally forget that you threw that interception because you can't start second-guessing yourself. But I think it's a huge point. And I don't know, man, I got your back on this one. I think it might be the number one thing, which is resilience, right? I think in a lot of ways you might think intelligence, and I'd love to do a deep dive episode on this. It might be intelligence, but I don't think so by any stretch, right?
No.
It might be work ethic, but I think work ethic can make you crumble if it's not combined with resilience. So I think to your point, it's this bias towards action in strong resilience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. Like those two things are unstoppable, right? You think about it. The smart person may get to his goal in 3 steps. Maybe the person who's not so smart, it might take 5 steps, right? That's where like he might have failed more times, but because he got up every single time and kept going, whereas the smart person might be like, you know what? I'm tapped out. I don't want to do it anymore. Totally. I think that is how many great leaders who are running companies, you listen to them and you're like, dude, I'm smarter than you. Like you're no genius. Yeah. You just have a penchant for action, right? Over and over and over again, and a willingness to take punches, right? But keep going.
Yes, dude. Those Walter Isaacson books, right? Like it's the same book, the Steve Jobs and Elon Musk book, which came out before everybody hated Elon, right? Like, but you read those, it's such a great point. It is those two things. One, a bias towards action, and 2, resilience. Like just like in no point are you reading that book like, yeah, why wouldn't you make retail in computers better? Why wouldn't you make solar panels easier to install?
Yes, it's all. Steve Jobs, I think, epitomizes this. Steve was not an engineer. He was not a designer. He was none of that, right? He just like, we need to make great products over and over and over again. Obviously demanding, but technical genius? No. Creative genius? No, right? Did he have a vision of what he wanted? Absolutely. He had no idea how to get there. But he had this ability to say, no, we're going to keep hiring people until we get the right people, right? And we're going to keep going no matter how many failures we have until we get the right product to market. Yeah. He's the epitome of this.
Isaacson called it the reality distortion field, if I remember correctly. And everyone was always like, no, Steve, we can't do this. And he was like, yes, we can. And that's, if I say there's anything disappointing about myself in my career, is that like, it's hard to keep that reality distortion field up. It's so easy to find a reason not to be like, oh, I see that point. I see this point. And you're trying to collaborate and you're trying to be nice. But like, if you can find a way, to your point, to listen to the team empower that team, engage that team, clearly communicate with that team, but create that bias towards action. And then at those moments of failure, help them get up off the mat. That's an unstoppable team. And maybe
Totally
that's
agree.
what holding companies are missing.
Yeah, I agree. Where does humor play into this? Right? Like, I think about this. You've got to be likable at the same time. Right? And so, yes, you have to have humility and you have to have integrity and all this sort of stuff. But I can't tell you how many times I've been charmed, right, by not so great people, but I've forgiven them because I like them. They made me laugh. They made me feel good.
So is that good or bad?
It's good. I mean, if you use it for good, it's great. But I think people forget this. Again, I see it a lot as people get their first management job. Like, all of a sudden, they're no longer yucking it up with everybody, right? Like, no, that's exact. You need to build personal relationships, right? And I don't mean you need to be friends, right? This is not a family. This is a team, right? But like, you need to basically be likable, and people need to be like, that is a shortcut to trust. I'm sorry. Humor is a shortcut to trust. If 100%. I laugh at what you say, right, then, you know, you must get who I am because you said something that made me laugh, which means I trust you. I'm sorry. Like, it's proven. And I think humor is a big thing, and likability. So, you know, this
especially
is something
for us, right? In advertising, we're in the business of emotions, so we need to find emotions to lean on. Yeah, I don't know if everybody's like this, but the shit that makes me laugh is when somebody gets hurt in some way, shape, or form. Like, it's just old school slapstick, or maybe it's more modern. But in the business world, nobody wants somebody getting hurt. So my favorite thing, and this is the that makes me laugh, is making fun of myself, right? Yeah. Like, I had a meeting the other day. I don't know what I was doing. I'm sitting there on Zoom, and I had my lunch across my nose. I don't know if people could see it because the cameras aren't that great on Zoom. Yeah. But like, I don't know, dude. At that moment, like, dude, look at what a schmuck I am, right? But like, I think to your point, making people laugh, but also disarming them. Like, there's a time I told the team, we should unpack this because this is going to sound really weird on a podcast. There's a time I pissed my pants before a meeting once. Like, people are like, why are you telling me this story? This is a horrible story. This is weird, dude. Why are you telling this story? The point of the story is like, we're all going to fall down. We're all going to make egregious mistakes. And I'm going to give you advice over and over and over again so I can make you better at what you do. But I don't mean it to come like I'm on the mountaintop and I don't make any mistakes. I make these awful mistakes. I've got food on my nose. I pee my pants occasionally, right? Like, share these stories so that people have the confidence to your point, have a bias towards action. Yep. Make some mistakes, get back up off the mat.
100%. You know, too many kids are learning how to manage people by watching shows like Industry or Succession or like that. Like, that is not real life. You know, real life is charming the hell out of people, making friends, and realizing that, you know, you have to make some tough choices in life. You're not going to be able to make everybody happy, including your coworkers, your boss, and your spouse.
So then, as we take it out of here and wrap up this podcast, you can lead an organization like Brian Cox in Succession if you're really good at his version of off. So can you give us that, and we'll take us on out of this podcast?
Off, ta-ta.
That's awesome, because I had it the other way, because that is one of the ways he does it. He also does it where the f is the first syllable and cough is the second, where he's like, cough.
Yes.
Damn it, that wasn't good. Yours is so much better.
What's even better is when somebody says something and all he does is he goes, uh-huh. Which basically means like, I don't believe a word you're saying.
Yes. Dude, by the way, those are your two moves when I've got ideas. You give me the uh-huh, and then you give me the we could do that. Yep. Like, oh, dude, we do this, and you're like, we could do that. I'm like, that's a bad idea. We could do that. Yep.
Or we could do something else.
Idea is dead on the vine. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone. This is Brand Champions. Have a great day.
Ta-ta.
Brand Champions is a Questus production. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and review wherever you tune in. You can submit mailbag questions to brandchampions@questus.com.